Today's tech tip is how I compose my camera. So I do use the rule of thirds often, and I use 3ds Max's built-in safe frames. So if you right mouse click and go to safe frames, I have safe or action safe and title safe checked. 66 horizontal, vertical 0, 0 horizontal, 66 vertical, as you see here. Apply, and then I get my rule of thirds. In my camera settings, I turn on show horizontal line. This way I can put my horizontal on the bottom third. And these are definitely typicals, because what's more important? If, let's say, the foreground was more important, then I would put that horizon up here on this third. In this case, the building is more important, so I drop the horizontal line down. I usually have my building rotated 2/3 and 1/3. 2/3 is in light, 1/3 is in shadow. And I try to keep the ends of my buildings the same distance from the edge, and that's where it gets a little tricky. So I have this plugin or this program called Fly Matrix. It's an overlay, and I stretch the overlay box over my viewport, and then I have different settings here. I can keep on adding grids, diagonals, there's a spiral, there's a bunch of options. I use the grids, and as you can see, that just pop grids at the end, and I'm way off here. There's way more space over here than over here. It's important that I have that on the left third. So to do this, I may need to rotate the entire building. So what I'll do is I come in here and I'll readjust the grid. This is an overlay, so it's always on top, which is real nice. And then on this viewport, I can play with it, so I can line this and this edge of the buildings closer to this line and this line. And I'll grab that. So that looks good. Now I lose my line there on the thirds, so I'll come back up here and I'll right mouse click. Select the camera. And then I think if I zoom back in, I can get that lined up better. And then now, let's turn this off for now. My horizon line is a little off, so I'll raise that a little bit. I'm cutting off top of my building, so I will zoom back out a little bit. So it's not going to be, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think I'm satisfied with that. Let's check this again. So I think right there is good. I once worked with an architect, and he asked me to design something. And I said, I'm not a designer. He said, well, you know what you like. So that made a lot of sense. Doesn't mean my taste is good, but I think everybody's a designer. And composition's the same way. We all know what a good image is. Most of us don't know why it's a good image. if you follow these rules of composition, you're creating a good image. So I am going to add a sun and sky. So I'll drop something that I've just used and I liked. Let's go with, I believe it's that one. Okay. I'll go with that one. I'll just merge it from another project. So I use an HDRI, and it's all set up, so I'm not going to reinvent it. So I'll rotate my sun typically perpendicular to my camera, which is over my shoulder. And that'll give me the most contrast. It'll bring this 2/3 in light and that 1/3 in shadow. Let me save this really quick. And this gives me something jumps in my head. I was once invited to teach at Autodesk University. And I did an open software. And I didn't talk about render settings, nothing. All I talked was about composition. My point was, it's not the software, it's not the hardware, it's not necessarily how well you build a model. It's about composition. Was never invited back, didn't get very good ratings, reviews. They didn't understand. And that was about a decade ago. And still to this day, that holds true. You can give anybody a camera and they can just shoot bad photos. You can give somebody a faster computer and they can just produce bad renderings faster. So I'm going to quickly render this out, and I'll use a material override. I use V-Ray. Oops. Again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to reset these. It doesn't matter what software you use. So here we go, just a basic gray material. And I'll put a little dirt map in it so it gives a nice detail. And I'll make the radius pretty small. And this building is basically on a flat site, so I'll put in a just a plane. Oops. V-Ray plane. I'll make sure that's right. I'm gonna lower it down a little bit. Okay, one more check of the settings. Progressive, good. And one thing I usually do is here in color mapping, the burn value, I 0.4, which is a good number. Everything else in varies is default. I'll put a denoiser. This way it'll clean up a lot faster. And there it is. So as you can see, I'll have my road and traffic and all that stuff turned on, and but that's how I set up my scene. And again, the program I use is called, let's see if I can get a tooltip here, Matrix. It helps me line up my composition. There's also one that I use, and it's called Pen, I think it's called, or Epic Pen. And what this does is it lets me draw over things, which is really, really neat. And I do that a lot if I want to mark something. So I'll just say I want to make a placeholder. I'll put a placeholder there. That always stays on my screen so I can move things around. So that's a pretty neat little program as well. When I'm reviewing my screen with a client, I'll launch this. So hope those little tips help you.